You want Roblox JoJo, huh? Alright, I'll give you Roblox JoJo. Stand upright rebooted, stand upright, whatever, is garbage. It's trash. Okay guys, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. And no, this isn't like Crusader's Heaven where maybe there's a shot. No, this game is just awful. And it has like 12 to 13,000 players right now. What the fuck? If there's ever a representation of just how desperate and willing to play garbage the Roblox JoJo community is, it's Stand Upright Rebooted. Because this game, as far as I can see, is no different from the old god-awful Stand Upright. Now come on, maybe I'm being unfair. So what is Stand Upright Rebooted? Well, if you weren't around back in the day, there used to be a game called Stand Upright. It was this exact game, without any differences. And I know there's gonna be like 4 people that go in the comments, they're gonna be like, but Eclipse, there's like 3 differences. Yeah, whatever, who cares? It's the same game. About a year ago, Stand Upright was taken down to the cries of many a 12-year-old who played for 40 hours and made themselves able to one-shot kill you with a single punch, and hasn't come back until this game. Now, how it came back, whether all the assets were stolen, I have no idea, and frankly, I don't care, because the game still sucks. But let's talk about the game. Stand Upright is a Roblox JoJo game with potentially the worst of every genre of Roblox JoJo games. Almost as if it was meticulously crafted to be the worst and least fun possible. We have absurd grinds, ridiculous stand chances, ridiculous attribute chances that add on to the RNG of the ridiculous stand chances. Players that are so monumentally powerful than anyone else that they can kill you in 2 hits without even summoning a stand. Subpar animations, subpar combat, subpar stand models, and zero actual objectives in the game. And you know what? I don't get it, because it feels like every single one of these things that I've talked about has been complained about ad nauseum in other Roblox JoJo games, and they're deal breakers in those games. And despite that, this game has a bunch of players. Why? I don't get it. Is it because it's new? Is it because people said it was good for the longest time, even though it never was? Is it because people really deep down just want to kill people in 2 hits, and they just don't want to say it out loud because they know they sound stupid when they do? I am so lost. But you know what? I feel like I have to explain myself, because I know if I don't, I'm gonna get attacked, and I'm gonna get attacked anyway. So frankly, doing all of this doesn't really matter. But I want to address all of these things one by one so that maybe people will have a better idea as to why I'm so confused. Because no, I'm not gonna play this game. People are telling me constantly, I keep getting DMs over and over, Eclipse, Stand Upright's back. Why haven't you talked about it yet? It's so good. But it's not, it's terrible. Whatever, let's take it from the top. Let's try to get to the bottom of this, because I really just don't understand. So the first thing that I want to talk about more in depth, which wasn't even on the initial little "this is why this game sucks" segment, is the fact that there is no directions whatsoever. You spawn in and you're just expected to understand everything that you're supposed to do. That, or you're supposed to look up a guide. And if you've seen any of my videos on AUT, I've said it time and time again, and I'm going to keep saying it, that throwing players into a game and expecting them to look up outside resources is awful game design. Now, is that gonna matter to the 9-year-olds who think that this game is the second coming of Christ? No, because they're gonna say that it's a Roblox JoJo game and you should be expected to know what to do. But that's not how games work. You should never just be expected to know what to do. And so being thrown to the wolves with literally 0 direction is not a good place to start. Scattered around the map, there is an absolute ton of NPCs, all with varying level locks and varying actual uses in gameplay. Some send you into dungeons, some give you quests, some are shops. They all have different level requirements. They're all scattered across the map with no rhyme or reason whatsoever. And there's never any directions as to where you need to go next after you've done a certain thing. There's a quest to kill 5 thugs at level 1. After you get to level 5, there's another quest halfway across the map to kill Giorno. If you didn't know this was here, then you might sit there killing thugs for hours because you get diminishing returns and basically nothing as the XP bar goes up every single time you level up. After you get from level 5 to level 10, there's another NPC. You get the idea. But the point is, how are you expected to know where the quest givers are, and how are you expected to know what levels they're required at unless you just randomly stumble across them? It's just terrible design, and it doesn't surprise me in the slightest. This almost seems like the par for the course kind of thing here. But I really wish games would just stop doing this. Someone might tell you that this would encourage exploration of the map, but there's nothing to find on the map, nor is there anything interesting about the map. It's a low poly version of Mario with randomly strewn about NPCs, quest givers, and dungeons. And all the while, if you're playing in a public server, if you're trying to explore, you're liable to just get murdered in 1 to 2 hits by some random guy anyway. So exploration means jack and shit. Now we've been talking about these quest givers, let's talk about the grind itself. In case you somehow haven't noticed, the only gameplay you're seeing right now is me beating up brainless AIs. And that's because that's really all I can do right now, until I grind for another 40 hours to get to the highest level, so that way I don't get killed in 2 hits. Now, I feel like grind is a slippery slope, especially when talking about Roblox games, because kids nowadays, especially on this platform, have been desensitized to think that grind is a good thing. Maybe because they just want to find ways to totally waste their time, but sitting there beating up the same enemies over and over and over again, at least in my opinion, not super fun. The reality is that it needs to take time in order to get things, otherwise it's meaningless. So some level of quote-unquote grind is always going to be necessary. But the problem is that games need to balance that grind with making things fun. Stand Upright, in case it wasn't clear, fails miserably. Mostly because fighting the NPCs is not even a little bit fun, and you have to fight them so many times in a row that it slowly rots your brain until it's turned to mush. And the worst part is that if you didn't want to do the grind, you can't not do the grind, or you're screwed. Now, what are you screwed out of? I don't know, because there's nothing to do in this game other than wander around and randomly murder people once you've gotten to whatever the highest level is. At least that's all I can see. That and trade crap, which we'll get there. But okay, people are gonna rightfully tell me, for once, that Eclipse, YBA has some grind, and you have to kill the same NPCs over and over and over again in that game, and yes, I agree with you. That sucks. But I never thought I'd say this, but YBA's grind is nowhere close to as bad as this. And I think a big thing that comes out of that is that when you play YBA and you're grinding, you do actually feel like you're having some sort of progression. Stand Upright? No, you don't. Why is this? Well, in YBA, when you're grinding and leveling up and using your skill points, you're doing all sorts of stuff, like unlocking new moves. And so if you just got a new stand and you don't have all the new moves yet, you're encouraged to continue playing, that way you can unlock all the new moves. Stand Upright, everything's defaultly unlocked, so there's no meaningful progression. In the stand skill tree, the only thing that's there for all of the stands that I've gotten at least is to flatly increase your damage. And even then, you max that out at like level 6. So once you get to that level 6, anything past that doesn't feel like any sort of substantial change. You feel like you're doing the exact same thing with the exact same moves at basically the exact same speed. So maybe killing those thugs for the first 10 times that you did the quest might have been fun, but now it's not. And you have so much ahead of you because you're not even level 10 yet. And then you go to fight the Giorno boss, and then you stumble into the other problem, which is the actual AI programming itself isn't fun to fight against either. Because these guys are frame perfect and don't really have any counterplay when you're up close. It just becomes a trade battle where you trade HP to them and they trade HP back, and whoever has more wins. And what does this encourage? Well, you don't want to take them head on because then you'll die. So it's cheese time. Let's run out of the way of the AI, use a single hit skill, run out of the way of the AI, use a single hit skill, etc., etc. And I don't need to tell you, I don't think at least, that that's not very much fun. Once again, using YBA as an example, YBA's AI isn't phenomenal, and once you figure out the AIs for all of the bosses in the game, it can be pretty much a cakewalk that you can do blindfolded. But having mechanics where there's actually startup on attacks and you can learn their patterns and perfect block and block things, yeah, that matters a lot. Here, I don't even know what the block does. It doesn't block damage. Maybe it halves it or something? I don't know. But it feels like block is totally useless. So the only way you avoid damage is by not getting hit. And those heavy attacks and whatnot, you just can't get hit by. So the actual fighting of the NPCs isn't fun, and there's no feeling of progression, so at least it doesn't take that long, right? Right? Yeah, of course that would be asking too much. Come on, really? This game absolutely despises your free time. It wants to waste it as bad as possible. And I'm gonna tell you exactly why and how. In order to get from level 10 to level 11, I had to kill this guy, who admittedly is very, very easy to kill, 7 times, which took me 3 minutes. 3 minutes for one level doesn't sound so bad. But you also have to consider that this is at the start of the game. There are quests that are for like level 70 something up, and it's already taking 3 minutes and 7 kills on a boss in order to get a single level. But whatever. This is the level 10 to 15 quest giver as far as I'm aware, and so I'm going to be solely killing this boss from level 10 to level 15. And so if I have to do it 5 times, in theory, it should take me 15 minutes. 15 minutes of killing the same enemy over and over again that barely fights back. Not super fun, but also not the end of the world. Until you realize that it's not really going to take 15 minutes. In fact, it's probably going to take closer to a half hour. Why is this? Well, it's because the XP bar goes up exponentially every time you level up. The XP rewards, on the other hand, don't go up until you've passed up to the next level of bosses. In other words, every 5 level increment, which means that this 3 minutes that initially I had to deal with is going up and up and up. All the while, the guy I'm killing and the speed at which he dies doesn't change at all. There's no way to speed it up, nothing. You just gotta kill the same guy for 30 minutes to go up 5 levels to go fight another guy. And odds are that next guy is gonna be harder and have more health. And it's not harder in terms of actual challenge because there's no skill involved. It's harder in the sense that they have more health and do more damage, because that's this game's definition of challenge. So you know what? If you want to go in the comments and tell me, Eclipse, you're overreacting, 30 minutes killing the same guy isn't that long of a time, especially when you're only level 10 and barely started the game, then go ahead. You can tell me that. But I'm going to stand over here and tell you that spending 30 minutes killing the same guy over and over again, when that boss is not only not fun to fight, but I don't feel any sort of progression, and my brain slowly turns to mush, yeah, you know what? I'll pass. But the quote-unquote grind doesn't just stop with levels, because why would it? This is Stand Upright, and in Stand Upright, the grind never stops. Obviously, we wouldn't be content just grinding levels all day, so instead we should grind for stands as well. And just because Stand Upright really wanted to give me as much ammo as possible, they made stand grinding the worst it could be, by adding f***ing attributes. Now, if you've heard me talk about attributes before, you know I f***ing hate attributes. Attributes are the worst thing ever in any of these games. Because if it's not bad enough that it's random what stand you get, it's random if your stand is even any good. And it means that if you're fighting against King Crimson, it might be a King Crimson that does half damage, or it might be a King Crimson that does double damage. And you won't know until you take half or double damage. That's f***ed beyond belief. And people that can somehow support attributes break my brain. I don't get it. Do you really like sitting there grinding for hours and hours and hours to get the 0.1% chance to get the stand you want, and then you get unlucky and it does half damage? Or you roll that 0.1% chance and you're like, oh my god, I finally got what you want. And then you fight someone and they beat the crap out of you because they do double the damage you do? Is that what you guys look for in games? Because it's certainly not what I look for in games. Attributes are the worst. And games that have them are pretty much dead on arrival for me. I can't stress it more. There is no bigger deal breaker in these kinds of games than whether or not they include attributes. It sucks. Please stop doing these things. Oh my god. Now, the last thing that I actually think is important to talk about is the combat itself. Now, the combat of this game might be a masterpiece, But my introduction to combat in this game is, well, yeah, as much as I like getting bopped twice by Jetstream Sam and dropping dead, not my idea of a good time. And if I have to grind for hours and hours and hours and hours to not get killed in 2 shots, then the combat not looking too great. I always stress combat a lot when I talk about these games because combat is pretty much all you do. The most you'll be doing in these games is fighting people. Whether it's fighting NPCs or real players, you're fighting. And so when games like these fail at combat because they're focused on their collectathon aspect or whatever they're doing, that's just really bad news. Some people are going to come out and they're going to tell me that in YBA, if you're a Prestige 0 and you're going up against a Prestige 3, then you're going to get smoked. And yes, I agree, you will get smoked. And I think some level of power dynamic between someone who's like level 4 and someone who's maxed out should definitely exist. But at no point in YBA does someone come by and M1 you twice and you die, regardless of what they're using. That's absurd. And that level of power difference between someone who's not leveled at all and someone who is leveled is far too much. If you go into 1v1s as a Prestige 1 with King Crimson, you can tear people to shreds. I've done it plenty of times before, and Prestige 3s mauled like no tomorrow. They hate it, and it's hilarious. So it's not like if you're not Prestige 3 max level, you're totally helpless in YBA. Because making yourself a formidable force and not a paperweight is still possible without having to be all the way maxed out. And even way back in the day when I used to grind on public servers on my alts, I still had plenty of instances where Prestige 3s would try to fight me when I was grinding and I was Prestige 1 level 25 and I'd whoop them because they suck. But that's not how things work here, because skill is irrelevant when you kill people in 2 hits of an M1. I don't think this needs an explanation. Does this need an explanation? No, it doesn't. We're done. So obviously there's more that I talked about at the beginning about the crappy animations and the crappy models and the fact that there's really nothing to do in this game other than level up and then randomly kill people in 2 hits. But honestly, do you really need me to talk about those things without getting the idea from the video that I've already made? The video is already 17 minutes long, and I didn't even think it would get to be this long. So making it any longer, definitely not necessary. Stand Upright is a game for some and not for others. And it is most certainly not a game for me. Not even close. This game is basically Project JoJo with extra steps. And that game, for good reason, is dead as a doornail. So I think that this game is probably liable to follow. How it even garnered this many people to begin with, I have no idea. And if you enjoy Stand Upright, please, if you got this far, tell me in the comments. I read the comments. Even the people who flame me, I read them. I do, I promise. And if you want to go down there and flame me and tell me it's the best game ever, do that and tell me why, because I don't understand. This isn't a bit for YouTube. I'm not feigning ignorance. I literally do not understand why there are 12,000 people playing this game. It's like Pet Simulator X, but at least with this game, I feel like I should be able to understand why 12,000 people are watching it, but I don't. I can only assume it's because no good JoJo games are coming out, and YBA hasn't been updated in like 9 months now, so that's why people are just desperate and they picked this. But even then, I heard people talking about how great Stand Upright was long ago, back when it was still playable. And I played it back then, and it was just as bad then as it is now. So I don't understand. Please enlighten me in the comments, because I would at the very least like to try to understand why people like this game. I'm never gonna like it, but obviously some people do, and I wanna know why. Anyways, that's all I got, so that's gonna be all for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, then you can go down and leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, you can leave a dislike, which I will not see because YouTube took them away. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.